Hi, I'm Old Norse specialist Dr. Jackson Crawford. Over the past 2.5 to 3 years, I have spent a substantial amount of time uh, creating, preparing, filming, and editing, and then posting videos on YouTube. And since some point about a year ago in mid 2018, that has actually been my primary source of gross income. Now I have a real job, quote unquote. I teach at the University of Colorado. I am a career academic so far, having taught independently at universities starting in 2007, running through 2014 with a year out of academia, 2014-15, but then in academia since 2015 to 2019, which year it is right now. And so I do have other income. I also have books, which generate some income, and then occasional film, television, video game, consulting gigs, which generate some income. But the bulk of my gross income in a given year now is from YouTube, and it's not from ads, it's from Patreon. It's people who, for reasons beyond me and probably beyond you, decide to contribute small monthly amounts to help me keep my videos about Norse language and myth, which are my areas of specialty, going. Now, the reason that I'm making this video is because I realized that YouTube was sort of a career, a second damn career, on top of my other one, when some of the emails people sent me about career advice, I realized were not about academic careers, but about YouTube. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about this career, I suppose it really is, of presenting information on YouTube. Because as one, I guess fan is the word, said by sending me this mug, I guess I'm a big deal on the internet. Not millions of viewers, big deal, but you know, anyway, it's all in good fun. Well, I don't know that I have particularly good advice for people who are looking to make a living as a YouTuber, but I will mention a few things that work for me, and then things that I'm working on for me. All right, some things that work for me. One, and it's incredibly cliche, but it's true, is you've really got to be yourself. You know, I talk about Norse language and myth, and there's a certain expectation that I've been dealing with since way before I was on YouTube, that means that I need to like be a Viking, right? Or that I need to, in some way, aspire to live some particularly Norse ideal or something like that. And that's just not who I am, right? Sometimes I run into this, my classic line when people say, well, I expected somebody who's an expert on Vikings to look like a Viking. I say, well, do entomologists dress like insects, right? Do paleontologists dress like dinosaurs is another good example, except I know paleontologists and some of them do. So that's maybe not the greatest example. You know, I am culturally a child of the Mountain West. I wear Stetsons and boots every day. You know, I enjoy fast draw competitions and rodeos and, you know, elk hunting and that kind of thing. That's just who I am. Norse stuff is a job, but I don't pretend to, like, inhabit it, which of course also leads some people to like you're not living as a Viking very well. Well, I'm not trying, right? Like I don't pretend to be Scandinavian. So be yourself. And I think that genuineness is a plus on balance. I mean, of course, there's people who are never going to listen to me, despite, you know, years of teaching at some of the best universities in the country about these subjects, because I'm not, you know, a Viking death metal looking guy. whatever that's going to happen. But I think that for those who care about credentials, about quality information, that the fact that I'm not pretending to be somebody else, and also not pretending to be a stereotypical professor, right? I mean, which in a lot of ways I think I'm not. A lot of ways I probably am. You know, typical bookish nerd, I suppose. But you know, I think that helps on balance. Another thing is having some kind of special something that's a little bit different from other people that might be considered your competitors. You know, after Harry Potter got real popular, everybody wanted to write Harry Potter. So you get a rash of books about kids going off to wizard school, right? You can check out Riff Tracks or MSD3K to see all the cheesy early 80s movies set in space that have a vague father figure and some vague magical energy, right? And who knows how many series of fantasy novels there are about a man, an elf, and a dwarf going off to destroy or get some magical object that follow, you know, the 1950s publication of Lord of the Rings. So, you know, yes, you can find shelves full of that stuff, but are you going to remember it? I think that what people remember and what they respond to is something that's a little bit different, right? I could sit in front of, and I used to sit in front of, a chalkboard, or dry erase board, and talk about Norse myth and Norse language and things like that. And that might be something people expect, right? That's the environment of a professor or a university instructor. But instead, I choose to make these presentations in front of the mountain environments that I love. And, you know, I think that that's kind of a signature thing. I'm the guy who talks about Norse mythology in the mountains. There might be other people who try using elements of that formula, but it might not ring as special, perhaps. You know, if somebody else goes out on top of a mountain in a Stetson and starts talking about Norse mythology, especially if he starts making, you know, constant remarks about how he's using reconstructed Old Norse pronunciation rather than modern Icelandic, just to try to get ahead of the thousands of comments about that crap. So find your own thing. You know, if I'm the guy who talks about Norse mythology in mountains and that works for me, maybe something else would work better for me, but I don't know what it is. You know, maybe you have your own combination of things. Maybe you're the person who talks about auto mechanics while you're barbecuing, you know. But you think about other people who have some success on YouTube or other forms of social media, and they're usually not quite what you'd expect. You know, I think about someone my brother watches, that Denim Danger guy in Canada, right? I mean, he's the guy who does cool tricks with his various motorized implements while talking about it in, you know, a hilariously Canadian fashion. You know, that's not something you would necessarily expect. It's something different, something that's kind of a spin. Or you know, it doesn't have to be like mix and match stuff like that, or like what I'm talking about. It can also just be something like one of my very favorite YouTube channels, if not my favorite, is Leslie the Bird Nerd, a lady in Newfoundland who gets to know birds as individuals and walks around in the forest and talks about their lives. And she's not anthropomorphizing them. She's actually she knows them as individuals, but she talks about them as birds. Anyway, it's very interesting. It's better than any TV show. Or Hickok 45, right? A lot of you probably know who he is. He has millions of followers, but he stands out there in, I think, Tennessee and just tries out different guns and just has a lot of fun doing it. Right. I mean, lots of people could do it, but it would be hard. There's some ineffable, you know, je ne sais quoi or whatever about how Hickok 45 does it. So you got to kind of have your own style that you bring to things that lets people remember who you are, and you're not just some generic person who's talking about auto mechanics, pine trees, whatever. Now, one thing that I wish that I did better and that I've got to work on is when making videos on YouTube means making money, directly or indirectly, it can be hard to justify to yourself any time that basically isn't working, right? And for years, really, I would have a hard time accounting for any time that wasn't spent sleeping, eating, working on my teaching job, working on my books, or working on videos, right? And even though working on the videos and to a certain extent working on the books brings me into places that I love, brings me into the mountains, gets me always looking for new scenic spots to spend some time in, I'm not relaxing when I get there, right? I'm going and I'm thinking about what saga have I not covered, right? What question have I not answered about this Norse god? What point of grammar do I know that Old Norse learners want more information about? And I need to stop that to some extent, right? Because it's burning me out. It's a hard wind on the candle that I'm holding up. And you know, I am by nature, I think, a fairly hard-working person. You know, I have ambitions. I want to make more money than you know the adjunct instructor life lends itself to. Go back and tell my 17-year-old self how much of a challenge that was going to be. Because of course, when I was 17, people said, well, talk to people who have the job that you want. So I talked to tenured professors, not realizing that I was never going to have tenure. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. I need to figure out how to make better boundaries between working and not working. I have very good boundaries about the internet. I spend a lot of time offline. In fact, you know, my favorite places typically I have no internet access or even cell reception, like right now. Right, this will be posted weeks after I record it. But I really need to try to lose some of that anxiety about like not working and take a half hour, you know, every other week or something to just, I don't know, go to a rodeo or something, you know. So, you know, the people who talk about self-care, to someone like me who maybe has workaholic tendencies, that often sounds lazy, but you do need to take time to rest and recharge, because often those are also the times when you get your best ideas. So if you find yourself, you know, making videos or some other social media product, and just always tempted to be working and making more, it is good to keep a consistent schedule, and 2 uploads a week has worked fairly well for me, but it's also good to keep a consistent attitude toward, or it's also good to take consistent time for yourself, because time that I'm spending talking about Norse mythology is not time for myself, right? It's time for you, and if I can make something back from doing that, then so much the better. But I need to also take what I'm making back from that and put it toward myself a little bit better. And I recommend that you try to build that into your own system if you're starting out doing something similar. Well, I hope those reflections have been informative or useful, or perhaps slightly thought-provoking for you and not completely numbskulled on my part, although they probably were. And I'll conclude this by saying that yes, it is June as I sit here in southern Wyoming next to a pile of snow. Right, it's just dug out around the doorway. It's a late summer in the high altitudes around here. It's been hot down in Boulder, but coming up in the mountains, it's nice and cool. not to say cold. All right, well folks, from beautiful Wyoming, please know that genuinely I'm wishing you all the best.